like a $500,000 of debt is like a mountain, like a bone crushing mountain of debt that is heavy, that freaking sucks to carry around. And if I focused on the $500,000 of debt, I would never get out of bed, I don't think.
You're listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to helping everyday men build legendary relationships with yourself, your partner, and your world. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and the aim of this podcast is simple: to help you navigate life with more clarity, more confidence, and purpose-driven action, with plenty of stories, a load of lessons, and some loving straight talk. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I am your host, Mike Campbell, and today's episode is an interesting one. Man, when we talk about the idea of getting your shit together, being in the shit, facing your shit, overcoming it and growing out the other side of it, today's guest, Dan Harrison, has a beauty of a story and many other stories, I think, weaved into that, and I'm really excited to bring this episode together and to you. Dan is a wonderful man, someone I've had the pleasure of getting to know. He's someone who can certainly tell a story, and he's got plenty of stories to tell. The story that we get into today, you know, the context is really looking at, in some parts, money, in some parts, large amounts of debt, $500,000 in debt for a 22-year-old, as he was at the time. And Dan kind of talks us through his journey of, you know, making decisions that got him into $500,000 worth of debt, and then what his process was after that, how it weighed on him, how he chose to work on himself and become more skilled and, you know, grow as a person so he could kind of get free of that, but also the complete flip of that and how it would get too much for him. And he would numb and hide and run. And he always had this big old bag of shit following him around, fundamentally. So it's a great conversation, and we explore, you know, changing your relationship to money, which is something that Dan, you know, has now grown into as a financial advisor and now a coach for entrepreneurs. He'll share all of that information in the podcast. Changing your relationship to money, I think, is so incredibly vital, or at the very least looking at it, because for a lot of dudes, a bunch of our shit sits around money. It sits around our worth and where we place value, and we get so confused, and we often think, if I just had more money, if I just had more time, you know, life would be easier. But we've often got a pretty messed up and misconstrued relationship to money and our own worth, and so Dan explores that in this episode as well. And as you can possibly see, part of the theme that I'm discussing when it comes to this episode is about getting your shit together. So take this as a little reminder that next week, depending on when you're hearing this, of course, next week we are releasing the brand new Get Your Shit Together course. How to make your shit make sense, stop sabotaging yourself, and step into your potential. Make sure that you keep an eye out for that. You can check out my website, you can check out my socials, and if you're not on my email list, then make sure you jump over and join that. You can find that at the link in my bio on my Instagram account. As always, you can message me, support@mikecampbell.com.au, if you've got questions and if you want to know more about the course, when it's coming out, and how you can get involved and get one of those first limited spots. Otherwise, this is the podcast. As always, I'd love to know that you're listening, so please flick us a message, let us know on social media that you're listening. As always, click download, subscribe, like, and head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review if this podcast lands with you. And of course, once you listen to this, if you like it and there's a man out there that you think would benefit from it, make sure you send it along to him. And now it's time for the show. Dan Harrison, welcome to the Everyday Legends podcast, brother. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
How are we doing today?
Doing well. It's a good day above ground. Good day.
Very nice. So, Dan, I want to dive into a few things. I'm sure this conversation might take us in a few directions, but where I want to start is introducing you a little bit. It's the kind of standard part of the podcast. And, I have plenty of different kind of people on, and, it's always the case of some people know, some people don't. I've had the great privilege and pleasure of getting to know you a little bit through, a circle we sit in, and actually met you in person for real a few years ago when I had the opportunity to head over to Canada for a mutual friend's birthday. But I'd love to introduce you a little bit to my audience. So the question I've got for you is this: take it wherever you want.
Oh, that's dangerous.
Dan Harrison, who are you?
Oh, man. Just that question. I don't know. That's the question I've been wondering myself for like most of my life.
Well, and how do you go with it?
Yeah, it's a day-by-day thing, my friend. A continually evolving human, hopefully a better version of myself today than yesterday. Who I am, I think newly a father would make its way into the identity. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I'm a husband, happily married to an amazing woman. I am professionally, I identify as a coach or an entrepreneur. I'm an ex-certified financial planner. I escaped corporate and the finance world, so that's a past version of myself. Past versions of me are like wide-ranging, from a wild party animal to a monk-like meditator to a mediocre, not so great guitar player. There's a big spectrum of things of is this Dan Harrison, but generally I'm just a pretty easygoing guy who's got a passion for spirituality, soul work, understanding myself, relationships, and just trying to for me, I love entrepreneurs and helping them grow their businesses, and that's what I'm kind of passionate about these days, and what I spend a lot of time doing.
Beautiful. Oh, so some different hats, some different identities, and yeah. Okay. So I'm hearing some things that I recognize. And what I know about you. So then what I'd love to explore is, okay, so there's, as you said, some former kind of identities. I escaped this part. So can you fill us in then a little bit on where you are now? You said coach, entrepreneur, you love helping entrepreneurs and your own continual digging to the layers and into the soul. Maybe it's not a short story, maybe it's a long story, but the Cliff Notes, how did that, because that's a big change, right? Use the word escape, and that's often something that I hear in a lot of men who want to maybe get into a different career, and we don't have to have that conversation. But what was your journey from, school into a career that then clearly at some point you decided, I'm out of here?
Yeah. I've got the Cliff Notes for you. Excuse me. So the long story short is, out of high school, I went and I was a ski bum for a couple years. That was great, and mostly wore the party animal hat during those years. And then years. Came back into the real world and was watching like the Home and Garden show, and saw these people flipping houses, and thought, oh, maybe I could. That sounds like that's a great way to make money. I'll flip some houses. And I've always been a big dreamer. So it very quickly went from maybe I'll buy a house and flip it to why don't I do a condo development instead of doing one house?
This is fresh out of being a ski bum partier.
This is like still basically a ski bum, but just in everyday life now. Yep. Yeah. No experience. No.
Had you had an interest in houses?
No, it was just like, oh, these guys are making money. It seems like I could probably do that. That seems like figure outable.
Mm-hmm.
And but then yeah, and I was looking at houses, and then I see that these properties right next door, and it was all these condo developments, and it was like selling now for 400,000, and then I was like, there's 80 of those. I was like, 80 times 400,000. That's a lot of money. And then that started this whole like thing in my head, like, oh, what does that look like? I started doing research. I started like talking to other land developers, and basically got a land developer to give me a letter of intent that he would partner with me if I could buy a property, get the neighbors on board, do all this stuff that I'm sure he thought there's no way this ski bum could do that. And I truthfully don't. It was 2008, so it was like back then, the Wild West with banking. It was before the collapse of oil. And basically, I walked into a bank with a business plan written with pencil crayons, and and they, for some reason, gave me a $500,000 line of credit.
Right.
And then I spent that $500,000 line of credit on some on the property, some I had some fun with. Some I and like architect drawings, and basically did everything that was needed.
Yeah.
Only to find out that the land developer pulled out, and I was left holding a big bag of debt.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I was in the
23.
I was 22. Yep. And I was working as a server at the time, making $8 an hour plus tips with $500,000 of debt, and that's just like a crazy dynamic. Oh, yeah. So I was in the bank every week, just being like, I just don't want to go bankrupt at 21, 22. What do I do? And then I was in there so much that they gave me a job, and and my career in finance began. And I started off as a traveling insurance salesman, working only on commission.
Yeah.
And little by little, worked my way up, became a certified financial planner, went back to school, built books of business, became an advisor to other advisors, eventually sold my practice. 10 years went by before I got rid of that house and that debt.
So the house existed?
Oh, yeah. I held on to it and avoided bankruptcy. Lots of crazy stories in between, but for another podcast. It's too much there. And then in 2016, I left kind of corporate, left the financial.
So you had your own consultancy.
Yeah, I was mostly doing consulting, so sales training, hiring and training financial advisors. And then in 2016, I wanted to leave the kind of corporate world. The way that model works doesn't work, actually. And so wanted to build my own thing online. And it was a fee-only financial planning service and money coaching. So relationship to money, plus financial planning. And yeah, I basically built that into, a six-figure business for a few years. I sold it. And during that time, I learned all about marketing funnels and Facebook, and realized I'm actually way better at sales and marketing than I am financial planning. And I just went all in on sales and marketing. And now I help, heart-centered entrepreneurs and coaches build awesome products and programs and help them sell and market them online. And that's what I do now. And I get to work from home and manage to get out of debt and manage to get out of the industry and create a life by my own design by some miracle.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I want to explore a little bit of this, quote unquote miracle, because obviously it was not a miracle, but results of your own doing. Right. First of all, the initial one, which was like, oh shit, I'm 22 and I have $500,000 worth of debt here. So can you take us into that head a little bit? Like, as you said, you were clearly determined, right? Like, I'm going into the bank all the time. Something happened because they were like, here's a kid, let's give him a job. But, like, it would be easy to look at like, I know, and you've been in that work for such a long time, but I know for a lot of men that I work with, when we look into like a bunch of their shit, because it's fundamentally what we're doing, often money comes in there somewhere, right? We've often connected a lot of our worth and our ability to get it, measures kind of our success. It connects to our identity a lot. And so then I can imagine, because I haven't been there, what having $500,000 of debt, like, carrying that around can feel like. So what does that do to a 22-year-old Dan Harrison?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm on one hand. So first of all, I'm like grateful it happened at 22 because I was young enough to make a big mistake like that and recover. But the weight of it was ridiculous. Constant stress every month, not knowing how I'm going to pay all the bills. And some of the, so like in the head of that 22-year-old kid, it's like a weird polarity in that on one hand, I am really unsatisfied with my results and I am seeking solutions. So I am going to personal development. I am looking at anything from energy healing to practical financial planning, like I am in an insatiable quest for personal growth and development to try and change my circumstances. So that is there. And then at the exact same time, maybe equal or louder, is like, I just want to run away and hide from this horrible, horrible mess, enter drugs, enter partying, enter avoiding, enter dark depressions, enter gambling, enter pretty much, any self-sabotaging habitual behavior you can imagine. I engaged in and entertained as a coping mechanism, as a, like I would, yeah, I mean, there's so many things I have done, but those were these two battling parts of my psyche for many years. Trying to grow and get out of it, and also avoiding it. And I think just over time and a continual commitment to trying to be a little bit better every day, eventually the self-growth and the compound interest of investing in myself and investing in learning and growing outweighed the tools I use to escape.
All the sabotage,
drugs,
and like
all the sabotage.
You use that term coping mechanisms, right? Which is something I think we can all resonate with on a variety of appearances and scales. But did it help you cope?
Yeah, I mean, I think like,
what did it do to the situation?
Sorry, say that
what
again?
did it do to the situation?
Oh, okay. Yeah, because like it helped me cope.
Yeah.
It didn't help me change anything.
Yeah.
It helped me forget about it for a moment in time.
Yeah.
It likely prolonged the time that I was stuck in debt and stuck in, just stuck not being able to do what I wanted to do, stuck not being able to. I was in the career for 13 years, not by choice, but because of circumstance.
Yeah.
Really. So yeah, it kept me stuck. Yeah.
And can I ask, and this might not be something that you thought about at the time, I'm interested to explore it though. If I had met 26-year-old or 25-year-old Dan, how would he have answered the question, like, who are you? What was kind of your, how did you see your identity?
Oh, that's like, yeah. I mean, if you kind of go through the timeline, right? Like at some point, if you said, who's Dan, I'd have been like, it's me. What do you mean? Like, can't you see me? I'm right here. And then probably a little bit later, it would be like, I am maybe my ideas, or like, who's Dan? It's like, well, the idea of of Dan. And actually before that, so my body, and then it would have been like ideas. And then maybe at 26, I was probably, if you ask me, it's like, well, I'm a spiritual being living in a physical body, having having an experience. And still a very selfish, singular point of view, I think, in terms of like who I am. Whereas like a distinction between, like, if you were to ask me now, it's like who I am is in community with, or I only am in the context of the people around me and the community around me and my family. And so there's definitely a distinct difference between now and 26-year-old. 26-year-old was, into the space of like, I'm a spiritual being with an intellect in a body, but I don't know. And I guess I still don't know, but
yeah, but obviously, there was a lot of different stuff going on, right? Like, as you said, there was that kind of dichotomy of I'm growing and I'm wanting to change this. I'm consuming, clearly, by the sound of it, at some kind of a rapid rate of like, how do I get myself out of this situation and grow beyond it? And also, how do I distract? How do I cope, etc.?
I want to reframe what I just said. If the 26-year-old version, if you just ask me, that's like me reflecting on like 26-year-old version. But if I'm like, if like 26 version actually me would have had a total front of who. So he was driving a real nice car. He was, living in a penthouse suite that he couldn't afford, and he was successful. But don't peek behind the curtains. So the way that I presented was a certain way. And so if you had asked me, I would have said something into inauthentic and insincere. So
what do you think was driving that front with, but also please don't peek behind the curtains?
Yeah, I think it's I mean, that's probably a deeper question than what is the cause of my inauthenticities. I think on some level it's probably trying to be accepted, trying to be good enough, as part of my core wounding, right? So trying to seek validation from others and to be good enough, and this is from all of my childhood stuff and abandonment wounds, so my inauthenticities would stem from those deeper childhood wounds of parents divorcing and constantly trying to feel good enough through achievement, accomplishment. And if I didn't have achievement or accomplishment, I could just say that I did, or I could present like I did. And
because look at my car and my penthouse,
right. Don't look at my bank account, but
So well, as you said, right, don't peek too carefully behind the curtains. So thank you for sharing that, and I, knowing a little bit of your story, but that also sounds like a beautifully current insight with a lot of retrospective and perhaps guidance, right? And knowing a little bit about what your wife does, and obviously your thirst to understand yourself more, as you've shared. So I'm interested to explore this a little bit more. So here's me, kind of poking the bear a bit.
Yeah.
What do you think was the consciousness in your intentions to that dude, 26-year-old Dan, or whatever the age, right? But
say that again.
What was he trying to do?
Ask me that again.
Because there was a lot of like hindsight kind of awareness in that answer. So what was he trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, that 26-year-old was really just trying to survive. That version of myself was doing the best he could with what he had, and was in a constant state of survival. So Yeah. So everything that was driving him was to be, well, okay, if you go even one, a little bit deeper, and this might be with more retrospective, insight, but one of the things that I discovered as unpack your identity and as you get into personal development, personal growth, and is um, is that when my parents left, when my dad left, uh, the conversation was that he was leaving for work and that he was going to have more money, and that basically the reason our family was breaking apart was because we didn't have enough money. And so on some level, like a 6-year-old brain interprets that and says, if I want family and connection and love, we have to have a lot of money. And enter the pursuit of money, which is weird because what happens is that pursuit of money, which I think is like I'm doing it unconsciously, because what I actually want is love, connection, and family, but it's taking me further and further and further away until, you get to a point of everything breaks, rock bottom, and these kind of moments that crack you wide open and be like, what the hell am I doing with my life? And then in that space, there's a space to explore and understand yourself even deeper and integrate, and realize that it's kind of like a lie. There's just like a program in there that is actually preventing you from the thing that you most want, or the thing that I most want. It's totally opposite direction. So
yes.
Yeah, I don't know if that answers that question or not. But
yeah. So then, because love, connection, what happened in the realm of relationships for you through these years then?
Oh man, yeah, that's a hairy one. Well,
and I am asking these questions with the utmost empathy, and I'm holding my hand up too, not necessarily the $500,000 of debt, but a lot of resonance, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean, the cool thing is, like now there's enough space where I can talk about it honestly. A lot of this has been integrated or worked on, but a lot of shame actually. If I think about some past relationships or what relationships were like back then, and just share full transparency on here it is, right? Here's the shit. So it's like maybe one of the most embarrassing. I still have a lot of shame around this, and like it's hard to admit, but there was like one girl that I dated. If I'm really actually honest, and this took me a while to like admit to myself, but I actually only dated her because she and her family were incredibly wealthy, and I never actually even saw her as a human. I saw the lifestyle and the wealth, and so it was like this unconscious belief system and structure was literally just running every part of my life, right? And relationships, finance, like health, it was like a single focus that the everything will be solved as soon as I have enough money, which is a total lie. So so it was just like dating. It didn't really go well. I mean, that was a very short-lived relationship, like most of my relationships back then. But
because what I'm almost hearing there again, which I resonate with, is like you were dating the idea of someone, but it wasn't even you. It was also like the idea of you was dating the idea of someone else.
Totally. Yes. That's very accurate. Yeah.
Which is kind of hard to create exactly what you were talking about, right? Love and connection and feeling of being seen.
There was none. Yeah. It was cold. It was cold. It was shallow. And shameful, really. at the end of it, in the breakdown of it.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this question. There might be nothing here to this, but I'm interested because, as you said, right, like there's, it's taken you a while to perhaps be truly honest with yourself in terms of the depths of that. Do you think at the time, that relationship or any other of these perhaps, like situations, do you think at the time there were indications, of the truth of it that you saw, or maybe just ignored? Like you said, there was a quote unquote coping mechanisms. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll say this. It's like, I find it difficult. I learn best when through real life circumstance and situation. So one of the benefits of being so far in debt and kind of like having, life in a tumultuous situation is you become a good problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
I developed some creative problem solving abilities, which is, really handy. But one of the ways in which I look at my work now or at life now is like my life is constantly communicating with me what is going on in my internal experience, and is constantly giving me feedback and those clues I think that you're talking about, like as to what, and so it's like when I look now, they are everywhere all the time. Like I can't not see them actually. And back then I couldn't see any of them because they were all in my blind spots. And the only saving grace or the only hope I had, or the only reason I think I was maybe even able to come out of that at all, was because I invested in coaches. I surrounded myself with an amazing group of friends. I had community who could show me my blind spots that I could not see on my own. And it was a result of a constant reflection, or being mirrored back to me, or in relationship with my community and coaches who I paid a ridiculous amount of money for, to tell me, hey, Dan, you're being an idiot. And
yeah, here's this thing that maybe you're missing.
Right.
And I suppose that's the idea with a blind spot, right? If you think about a car, like what helps with the blind spot is your mirror.
Sorry, my headphone cut out there. I missed what you were saying.
Okay, have you got me?
I got you now. Yep.
Yeah, I suppose, one of the things, if you think about a blind spot in a car, right, and what helps with that is mirrors. And also, right. I resonate with the blind spot thing. And also what's coming to me is like, certainly, in those, quote unquote, in those years, the blind spots were bigger, right? Yep. And, I wasn't able, and a lot of that was also not a non-willingness, right? And so the more I did that, certainly, and what I resonate with and recognize, a lot of men I work with is, the bigger the blind spots become. Like it almost, it eats up and it becomes bigger, right? Until something happens. And so that's what I want to, explore now is like, okay, so there's a bunch of shit there. And, we've seen a dude who's, a hell of a lot, more so got his shit together. So you said you invested in some coaches and stuff, but what was there, like a turning point, but not necessarily, but more so like, what was the journey out of all of this?
Yeah. I mean, there's many moments that I can think of that have had pivotal impact on my journey. And, if I think about life from a trajectory standpoint, right? You're going along life and the trajectory is kind of, you can almost see what, where you would end up if nothing changes. Your probable, almost certain future is X. But then people, events, circumstances come in and they shift the trajectory by what seems in the moment to be microscopic. And yet that microscopic shift in trajectory takes you somewhere completely different over time. And if I look back at my life now, I can see there are a handful of decisions that I made people that entered my life who created those microscopic adjustments to the trajectory. Some of the biggest ones were I worked with Bob Proctor for 3 years. That really helped me understand or adopt a new paradigm of thinking around money, around like a new way of thinking, really, like a program upgrade. Choosing to go back to school, learn about the financial system. That gave me a lot of confidence and awareness as to like how the system operates and who it's really set up to serve and how to work within that. My friends making a decision to go to Awesomeness Fest at Mind Valley, where I spent 3 days surrounded by amazing people who all became very good friends and invited me into their communities. And then happen chance stuff that I have no control over. Like where when I say at the beginning of this call, I said, you know, it's a miracle, because to think that I have that level of control, like there are so many things that happen in my life that are totally outside the scope of my control that have such profound impact and implications. For example, choosing to or like how I met my wife at a restaurant in Vancouver, because I, you know, decided to play hockey that day and her soccer team had played, and both teams decided to go to this one restaurant bar. And I guess the decision would be I gathered up the stones to go talk to her. It took way too long, but you know, like how does that happen, right? And so to me, there's just like there is a universal force that is conspiring on my behalf all the time, and part of my work is like I just want to get more in tune with that so that I can be in a co-creative space with that more and more, and listen to that. And all of those, and then there's like the absolute rock bottom shame-filled moments where you know, dealing with cops, being like incredibly embarrassed in front of my family about some of my life choices, getting honest, going into credit counselors and saying I'm a financial planner who has $500,000 of debt, and like actually owning my shit. Like these are there's a bunch of moments, but if I was to now take all those moments and think about, you know, what was having me choose or move during that time, and it was like across the board for as long as I can remember, there has been a pursuit to become the best version of myself. And that growth mindset, that commitment to get a little bit better every day, has me make better and better decisions every day. And over time, they compound and the trajectory changes. So yeah, maybe is there one thing? It would be like having a growth perspective, a growth mindset with a commitment to becoming the best version of myself while I'm here on this planet.
Very nice. And so I think if sharing that, there's a few things in there that I'd love to touch on. One is, you know, as you said, like there's been a kind of the weather. It's always been there or thereabouts. This idea of like, you know, becoming my best, the best version of myself, essentially. Do you think the intention behind that changed across time? You know, like 26-year-old Dan, for example, sounds like his intentions might have been different. How would you view it?
Yeah. I think, and if I was to distinguish what the difference might be, is it might be the shift from selfish pursuits to more other like community pursuit or family pursuit. Like the reason I'm driven to become the best version of myself now has nothing to do with me, really. It's like, it has to do with my daughter. It has to do with my wife. It has to do with, I mean, and myself, obviously. But like, there's just 2 years ago, an entirely new paradigm of what purpose means happened. Like why I do anything has now changed. Why I do everything has now changed because of becoming a father. And in that, it's like what happened was an identity shift. So it's like, I am a father. That is the shift, right? If you go back to 21, it's like, I am a smoker. I was a smoker. That was part of my identity. And it's like, and then I wasn't. But it's all of those moments that shifted where I could say, I am fill in the blank. Those were the moments that the reason behind everything changed. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Is there something else there?
No. Yeah.
So then, because one of the, maybe not the identity, I'm sure it tagged along, but you spoke about this big driver in a sense of, if I accomplish more and earn more money, then I will be loved on some level, right? So has that shifted? Let's start there.
I think that might be like, it's such a core wound for me. So for example, I'll tell you a sad story. Here's a sad one. That's what you wanted on this podcast, right? Real lifter upper. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Enneagram personalities or but as a personality test type of field of work, the number 3 Enneagram is an achiever. We could even just scratch Enneagram, just like I was an achiever. And so you're driven by accomplishments, and mostly it's because you were praised for performance as opposed to just being loved or praised as myself. And so that was like, growing up as a kid, that was what I associated, like how I get love and how I am loved and how I am worthy and how I'm good enough. And when I think back to that version of my childhood, and I think about my room, and my room was surrounded and covered in trophies and ribbons and medals. And if I think about all of those trophies and medals and ribbons as bids for love, or to just be good enough, that I couldn't get intrinsically, that I had to try and achieve externally. And so that was my programming, right? So to this day, I still seek validation. I still find a sense of worth in accomplishments. That's like my battle. That's like part of my battle to be good enough. Maybe that's like the human battle. I'm not sure, but it certainly is mine. And I don't know if it goes anywhere. I think what happens is like my ability to recognize it is better. But yeah, that driving force of like trying to achieve and accomplish and seek validation and be good enough is still ever present for sure. And being a dad, it helps shift that, and lots of things shift that to ultimately where it's like, it's just not unconscious anymore. I guess that's the growth is what once was unconscious has now been made conscious, and now I have some choice in the matter.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Knew that would come
some
around
conscious
eventually.
choice, right? Because there was always choice. It's just that, you know, there
Right.
was a big part of a head buried in the sand, I suppose, which again, personally, I resonate with. So then,
Yeah.
in that is this thing, money. So I want to explore that. So how then,
Mm.
like, has the relationship to money changed? Because clearly that was something that has happened for you, and it became part of your business. And again, it's like
Yep.
it's such a big identifier and piece of worth for so many guys. So how did that shift for you?
In a big way, money has become a beautiful, beautiful thing to me. Money has become a gift. Money has become a invitation to explore the deepest, darkest parts of self.
Mm,
As a financial planner, looking at people's finances and budgets for so long, the coolest thing happens when you look at the numbers aren't just numbers. Um, the I can look at people's budgets and I can see things about them that they probably that are in their blind spots, right?
mm,
Uh, you want to know what you value, you follow the money. What do you
mm,
spend your money on? Y- you know, and so money has become almost like, yeah, it's just an invitation and a tool for self exploration.
mhm,
Um, because when you look at your money with that lens, and you look at, what does this debt mean that I'm
mm,
holding? What have I made that mean? Or what are my limitations? Why am I stuck for only earning this amount? What
mhm,
is the belief system that has me only earning this amount? What must I believe if these are my results? And so if you can connect money
mm,
to the exploration of internal beliefs, then money can be the vehicle to untangle and to reframe and recreate beliefs. And if you want to know what you believe about money, you don't have to look very hard. You
mm.
literally just have to look at your money and it will tell you. Um, yeah. And so, for whatever reason, since as long as I can remember, the two things I've been passionately curious about are money and spirituality, or
Mhm.
like questioning my existential angst and why am I here? And to have those two things come together for me in such a way that they're almost one and the same, or opposite sides of the same coin,
Mhm.
where my money practice could be a spiritual practice.
Mm.
The exchange of money can be a spiritual exchange. They are no longer like these opposing forces, and I guess that's been my quest since
Mm.
forever. It's like, how do I conflate or have these two seemingly opposing desires and pursuits work together? And again, I'll probably spend my whole life trying to figure that out. But
Mm.
where I'm at now with that is it's a beautiful invitation. Money is a beautiful invitation into the self.
Yeah, very nice. Because correct me if I'm off the mark, what I was hearing almost in the earlier part of your story was like money had this hold over you. Does that sound
Mm.
accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. Money was a distinctly separate thing. Money was something to acquire. Money was acquiring money was about luxury, having
Mm-hmm.
nice things, like the purpose for money was different. And I didn't understand it, and I was confused by it, and it kept me stuck. And there was no relationship with it. It
Mm.
was this confusing thing that sucks.
Okay, so then,
And I
but
just I just want more of it.
yeah, I just want more of it, right? Like, just give me more, and then everything will be fine, like you said. So, okay, so to
Yep.
those listening who resonate with that, like, yeah, that's cool, Dan,
Mm.
but no, but seriously, if I just add more, then all the
Yeah.
other stuff would be fine, and then I can look at that stuff, and I can breathe. Survival, like you said before. Like, what are the steps? What do you do there?
Yeah. It's interesting because it's true and it's a lie. Right. The when I have more money, then everything will be fine.
Mm,
So the lie in that is that when you have more money, it would just be different. And there'll just be like different problems. More money, unless you deal with the shit, more money will just magnify the shit. So having more money will not solve your problem. I promise you that. If you do not do any of the other work, having more money will feel like worse, probably, because your problems will be magnified. And it's true because on some level, it's difficult to do anything if you're in a survival mode, right? How can you be, what a privileged place for me to be talking or exploring self-awareness, self-actualization. The only reason I can even, talk about or have time to engage in these concepts is because I've managed to satisfy my basic needs, shelter, food, my survival needs. And so on some level, if you are in a survival space where you need money to survive, that's your only focus. You go focus, you go hustle, you go do whatever you got to do to make the money that you need to be secure. Because if you're in a survival mode, there's nothing, like your nervous system is constricted. You're not thinking clearly. You're stressed. The only thing to do is to figure out how to solve that problem, which is easier than you might think. So that's so it's true and a lie.
But then also, like being able to connect to, like, essentially, so how much do I need to get out of that survival mode and then, create that sense of security, because it can be easy to stay in that place, even though objectively it might not be. You're not in survival mode now, but you're running a survival mode, operation, essentially, right?
Very true. Very true. Yeah. And I'll just that's very true. You can, your financial circumstances can change, but then the way of thinking doesn't change. I see that happen for sure.
Yes.
One practical thing that helped me that might be useful for people listening was like $500,000 of debt is like a mountain, like a bone crushing mountain of debt that is heavy, that freaking sucks to carry around. And if I focused on the $500,000 of debt, I would never get out of bed, I don't think. And so in order to get to a spot where even with a ton of debt, I could create a sense of freedom, I focused on what is the payment? So I'm paying down the debt. What's the minimum, or not the minimum, but what's the payment that I need? And that was only, $2,000 a month. Then the problem has been reduced down to $2,000 a month. That I can work with. That I can solve. How can I create $500,000? I have no clue. I have a better clue now. There's lots of ways to do that now. I can see. But 22-year-old version of myself had no clue.
Yeah, and especially in survival mode, right? Because
right,
you can't see as clearly and can't operate from such a high place.
Totally. Yeah. You're not thinking clearly. You have no your creative faculties are way down. But can you solve a $2,000 problem? And that was doable. And then one step further would be, can I create $2,000 of passive income so that the income can essentially take care of the debt, and I can relieve myself of the debt knowing that something else is managing it for me? And that's what I did. I started to figure out how to create passive income to take care of my debt so that I could offload it. But where you focus on matters. And that was one little hack that I think probably saved me to some degree, practically.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's reducing the size of the problem, and the other thing that you said in there was, there's this core wounding around money and so on, but also, what I'm hearing in that is we can go through some shitty experiences, and end up in some pretty shitty places based on our own choices, some of them quite perhaps unconscious. But when we look, and as you've stated, which I really want to stress here, I think is significant, when we are assisted in looking, and we have the coaches and the friends and the communities and the people that can point us and poke and prod us and nudge us and repetitively nudge us, we can see what gifts lie in the shit.
Yeah.
Because, you know, one simple thing you said was like your creative faculties have expanded, your problem solving has kind of gone, you know, just exponential, right? Do you think there's been, you know, in a simple sense, anything else that you see as this like beautiful gift that's come out of that wrapped in shit place?
Yeah. A lot. I mean, empathy. Like, yeah, empathy, a ton of relationships. I think as in terms of like a skill set that is practical is like sales. I sold my way out of $500,000. Like, like you learning how to, because what is sales? Sales is problem solving. And so learning how to sell becomes a high income skill that now serves me and all of my clients, and is the base of my entire career going forward, probably, you know, like to have that as a skill set. So, yeah, I think empathy, I think perspective, I think practical skills like creative problem solving. And my sister asked me this, you know, a few years ago. She said, if you knew what you knew now, would you do it again? Or would you have made those decisions and gone $500,000 of debt? And I told her, if that was the only way that I could know what I know now and have the paradigm and perspective that I have now, yes, I would 100% choose that again, even though it was shit for a lot of years. And I do not recommend following my path.
Yeah, but the context is the thing that we can look at there, right? Not necessarily the content of getting into that $500,000. So thank you for that. And, you know, also what I'm hearing in there is, you know, money, you know, another word that kind of coincides with that is wealth, right? And, you know, whilst your relationship to money and you know, what that might look like right now in terms of practicalities, there's also all this other wealth that you have gained, you know, empathy, perspective, and relationships. Like, holy shit. Yeah, totally.
Thank
you for that, Dan. Now I'm looking at the time and I know we need to jump off. So what I want to ask is we've kind of, you know, come to like where you sit now. So in however you would like to explain it to us, you know, what are you doing and working on that right now? And if people are super intrigued by this, how can they find you?
Yeah. Like, where do I sit now? Like, after all that, after the piles of shit in my past. Yeah, I mean, like I'm super blessed. I'm very lucky. I feel like, you know, 6 years ago I met my wife. That was probably one of those chance encounters that for sure changed the trajectory. She's a brilliant psychologist and therapist, and now not a day goes by without some deep conversation about childhood wounds and you know, how they're showing up in life. But yeah, I like right now, so that has been a, you know, transformative relationship, and then as it, you know, has translated into my work and as in my career, I believe, so there's a guy, Mike Michalowicz, and he wrote a book called Profit First, and he shared something that really resonated with me, and I think in a lot of ways we share similar missions or drivers. And when he was asked, you know, what is it that you're up to? He said, I'm on a mission to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. And that just lands for me. That is the most succinct way I could say what it is I'm up to right now. I believe in the world that we're heading into, a lot of freedoms might not be there in in the not so distant future. And understanding entrepreneurship, understanding money and the financial systems, understanding how to create your own sovereign wealth, your own independent wealth, and skill sets that allow you to have freedom is what I'm trying to help people develop and have in their own life. And the way that we do that is by understanding the way that we think about it with our mindset, the way money and the actual money system works, and sales and marketing, because to some extent, that's what we're all doing. We're all marketing and selling ourselves and our stuff. And so that's what I spend my time focused on. That's how I help my clients. People can find me at, right now, it's danharrisonconsulting.com or on Instagram at Intuitive Entrepreneur. And yeah, that's the best places to find me.
Beautiful. And we'll make sure we get all those links and all the stuff up there. Dan Harrison, thank you so much for sharing that beautiful insight into yourself, your story, some of your story, of course. Yeah, what an absolute legend. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, my friend. Been a pleasure.
You've been listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show dedicated to helping everyday men build legendary relationships with yourself, with your partners, and in your world. If you have got something from this podcast, please share it with someone that you think could benefit from it. And please visit your home for podcasts. Like us, subscribe to us, leave us a review. Your feedback is phenomenal in getting this in front of more eyes and ears. Until next time, I'm Mike Campbell, and remember to build that legendary integrity.